Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast, episode 75. Today I'm bringing on a very special guest, Dr. Ashley Turner from Dr. Ashley Turner over on Instagram. She combines health and wellness, food, with a beautiful aesthetic. It's something I've never seen before. Really beautiful, dark, moody photos that are curated and just something to see. So listen through this interview and then also go check out her beautiful account. While you're there, you will learn a lot about health, but you'll also be inspired by her beautiful home and homestead. My name is Lisa, mom of 6 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. So you're a mom to 3 girls and you homeschool and homestead.
Yes.
All of those.
Yeah. So we we are really home based at this point. I mean, I would say my full-time job is mothering and homeschooling, which is really I'm obviously so passionate about that. One thing that people don't know about me is, or a lot of people don't know about me, is that I have a degree in elementary education, and I actually spent several years in the public schools, and that was all kind of as my husband was going through chiropractic. That was my profession, and through that and through our season in chiropractic school, I really started to delve into the whole area of nutrition and holistic health. Obviously, we were immersed in this culture of a lot of like-minded people that really believe that, the body was designed to heal itself, and we just need to give it the proper, nutrition and tools to be able to facilitate wellness. So that was really a sweet time for my husband and I, who were already very naturally bent and definitely kind of critical thinkers, but being surrounded and encouraged by other people, and in that environment of just being hungry to learn about how the body functions best. So that was kind of a turning point for us, and where I got introduced even to the Weston Price Foundation and Sally Fallon's work. And so that was a shift for me, not only personally, but started even, professionally, to really kind of consider how I wanted to spend the next season of my life. So it's funny, we were newlyweds at the time. So we kind of packed up, moved from Pennsylvania, where we were both raised and had deep roots in Pennsylvania. We went out to Davenport, Iowa, which is where Palmer College of Chiropractic is. And I kind of joked, he took me out to the cornfields of Iowa, even though it actually is in part of the Quad Cities. But still, we were out in this kind of foreign territory, and I didn't have anybody except for him and these, holistic health people. So I actually picked up a copy of Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon Morell at that time, and I pretty much did a 180 within the span of a couple of days. I completely turned our kitchen upside down and planted a garden, and really just completely gave myself to this, way of thinking about nourishing our bodies. And my husband took a little bit longer to get on board. He was kind of shocked by the complete upheaval, but also loved my passion for just wanting to steward our bodies well, and do what I could nutritionally to support us. So I went from eating a fairly clean diet, but I would still say, we weren't, properly preparing grains or really scrutinizing the sourcing of our food much at all. So I kind of went from that to all of a sudden I'm soaking and sprouting and fermenting everything that we consumed, and, searching for raw milk, and, looking, buying my eggs from local farmers, and getting our our beef share and whatnot. So it was really a sweet time and an intense time. Sometimes when we're making decisions for our bodies and for our families, and I often recommend to people to take it slowly. You pick one thing for the next week or two to change, and then let it evolve. And for me, it wasn't that way. I tend to be kind of an all or nothing personality, but that's how it was for us. So that's a little bit about kind of where I started. If we want to fast forward, I know you were kind of curious about even where I am professionally now. I had my first child. And again, we're kind of walking this Weston Price nourishing tradition path, really not living a toxic lifestyle at all, and just doing our best to steward our bodies well. And I think as a new mom, especially, you're even more sort of encouraged and empowered to make the best decisions for your baby. So anyways, we had our first, and when she turned 2, we started noticing some pretty significant and severe symptoms in her, both in her brain and her gut. And throughout, as we kind of were starting to walk through this, what ended up being a really dark season for us because of these really significant symptoms, we were really confused and so broken as parents, because here we were, these, has a doctorate in chiropractic. We're, teaching these nutrition principles and holistic lifestyle principles, but here we have this child who is just so clearly suffering. Went through all the conventional, paths, and really ended up being super failed by conventional medicine and, what advice they had to offer. They kind of just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, you know, she's probably on the autism spectrum and she's going to be constipated the rest of her life if you don't give her Miralax every day. And so what we noticed as we stepped back, we thought, man, give her this Miralax and her symptoms explode. They're just amplified when we give her this, and so it kind of was this catalyst of a season of learning for us. And so, my husband started pursuing seminar teaching in functional medicine. And I went with him because I was the mom who was going to fight for my child. And so that was really, probably the biggest stake in the ground for me professionally, because I started learning voraciously. And so, through a course of a few years, I got my doctorate in naturopathic medicine. I'm a traditional naturopath and board certified as a doctor of holistic health. Also am certified as functional medicine practitioner, as well as functional genomics, looking at genetics, and alongside of functional medicine. So kind of a long story short, I would not be where I'm at professionally if I hadn't been in a place of trial with my baby. Probably, I mean, I definitely would have been interested, and that interest was sparked many years before she was born. But I don't think there's much else that is more awful
Motivating
than
and
watching a child suffer, more motivating, and just so sad to watch a child suffer. So that's kind of a long story. It brings me up to where I'm at professionally, and wrote a couple books in there as well. So that's where I'm at today.
yeah, I was thinking whenever you were talking about when you guys did your big life switch over to a traditional Sally Fallon, Weston Price type of thing, that's one of the things that I really love about that type of diet is I find that it takes sourcing things differently, it takes preparing things differently, but you're still eating all the same food in a lot of ways. Like it's not like you have to give up anything. You just do it differently in a more real food type of way when you're preparing the grains. Like I
Mhm.
make everything with sourdough, but we can still eat everything. Just
Yeah,
it's not super restrictive. So aren't your books now is one of your books a cookbook?
it is.
Yeah, like a
So
traditional food.
yeah, Restorative Kitchen, again, was sort of birthed out of this season of trial. So when as we were trained in functional medicine, we understood that our daughter actually had an autoimmune encephalitis, which is brain autoimmunity, and now it's kind of classified as this pandas pans scenario, and it has very significant brain symptoms. So, but at the end of the day, its roots are in an autoimmune condition. So, um, Restorative Kitchen is sort of a protocol that goes through. Um, Really, it's kind of a gut healing and autoimmune protocol, elimination diet, even for people that are struggling with symptoms. So, like I mentioned, we love the Weston Price Foundation. I know Sally. I've written for them. I've done podcasts with them. I've eaten at meals at Sally's farm and visited her. So I love everything about them. But I think sometimes we need to dig a little bit deeper into our nutrition and our health, especially when we have symptoms that aren't resolved just with switching over to traditional foods and traditionally preparing foods. So, Restorative Kitchen really takes out a lot of the foods that might cause an immune reaction. So this is
Right.
different than just a food sensitivity. I mean, it goes deeper because it elicits an immune response within the body. So things like gluten and grains and dairy, even raw dairy for some people will still elicit an immune response, even though I think it's definitely the way to go if you don't have a dairy sensitivity. Um, things like eggs. And then, you look at, soy and corn and food additives and things like that that really aren't always part of the traditional diet. Of course, soy and conventional seed oils and things like that, because they're going to be inflammatory. So Restorative Kitchen removes a lot of those foods for a season. And so the cookbook, it's actually a cookbook and a lifestyle guide. So the cookbook has, all these recipes. People have these chronic, symptoms in their gut or brain, diagnosed autoimmune condition, or any chronic illness. Some of these foods are going to just contribute to those symptoms. So we can do food sensitivity testing and blood work and all kinds of things that are going to help get to the root cause of those things. But I often say, the least expensive way is just to play around with your diet, remove some things for a period of time. And then if you strategically add them back in, your body's going to tell you which one of those foods really aren't agreeing with you, because that's usually we'll see the symptoms, flare up if a certain food is introduced and it's just not congruent with your body's physiology. So, really the whole first part of the book is just walking through, removing inflammatory foods, sourcing sourcing quality meats. We know that you are what your meat eats. So if you're having this conventionally raised beef or chicken or whatever, that can be inflammatory just from the mere fact that that cow or that chicken is not properly raised and properly nourished itself. So food sourcing is huge, no matter who you are, to really fostering optimal health. So then the second part of the book is the lifestyle guide. So we also know that so many lifestyle factors contribute to any symptom and whether or not you're going to be able to facilitate optimal wellness. So, various things, that I walk through: stress management, reducing the toxic load, kind of scrutinizing the toxins that might be in your environment, um, some things about exercise and sleep, and a lot of recipes, kinds of homemade personal care and household products, because sometimes it's hard to source those and sometimes it's just fun to make them. So all of that is really kind of what I've included in Restorative Kitchen. So
I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful too. I need to get my hands on it.
It was a joy to make because I mentioned earlier, I'm a creative. I love creating and making, just adding beauty to the world. So it was really a fun project to work on. I'm a homeschooling mom, so my kids were really involved, and we just had such a sweet time making it. It actually started out to be just a guide for our clinic, for our patients. And yeah, I was actually approached by a couple publishers and started that process. And then I realized, you know what? I think I want to say exactly what I want to say and not be, um, have my message altered at all. So we actually ended up self-publishing, which was a whole learning experience. But I think I'm happy that we did it at this point because when you get my complete heart when you
Right.
when
Yeah.
you read Restorative Kitchen. So yeah, it was a fun project.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you, what kind of principles do you stick by as far as traditional foods? Maybe outside of, if someone is healing from something, there's a lot more. You have to dig a lot deeper and figure out what it is that they're reacting to. I don't know if you've ever heard of. I'm sure you've heard of the GAPS diet. Similar
Absolutely.
to things
Yep.
like that. Of
Yep.
course, you've
Absolutely.
heard
We were on it for several years throughout
of that.
the process. Yep.
Okay.
Very
But
familiar. My husband's a certified GAPS practitioner. So
okay, okay. So my
very
sister,
familiar.
she reversed a dairy, I guess I don't know if you could call it an allergy, but
Mhm.
he had his blood tested. He was very highly sensitive to dairy. She did the GAPS diet for like 2 years faithfully, and then now he has zero symptoms of they tested his blood and you know, it's not sensitive. But
Wonderful.
what about whenever someone doesn't know if they necessarily have any symptoms of anything, but they just want to live a healthier life? They want to have more energy, feel better. What are some of those traditional type of things that you like to do, like fermenting or raw milk?
Actually, my number one recommendation is often encouraging people to scrutinize the fats that they are taking in. So, if we are, like I mentioned, consuming industrial seed oils, peanut oil, canola oil, soy oil, corn oil, all the different oils that we know are very highly processed and inflammatory. So those again aren't going to foster wellness. But when we look at our cells, the cells that make up our bodies, our cell membranes are completely fat. They're phospholipid bilayer. You see your lipid in that. They are a membrane. We need good fats just for integrity of our cells. And we know that our brain is mostly fat. We need good cholesterols and fatty acids for optimal brain function. So when we look at, the number one thing, in my opinion, I love just switching out fats. Looking for things like animal fats from good, properly raised animals like beef tallow and a good lard and duck fat. First of all, they're delicious. They are going to make your food taste so wonderful and um, be pleasing. But also, if they're from a responsibly raised animal, they're going to have really great fatty acid profiles that are going to actually foster an anti-inflammatory effect and give us good fat-soluble vitamins. So I love cooking with those fats, and some people get a little bit freaked out about animal fats, and I often recommend coconut oil. I mean, coconut oil is fantastic as well, has lots of antimicrobial properties as well. It can just help shift the gut and the microbiome in a better place. So that's actually my first one, just because of, we're really lacking good nourishment from a fatty acid standpoint. Um, Another thing would just come down to sourcing, like I mentioned before. Where are your eggs coming from and what are they eating? We can even go to the grocery store and see, free range or cage free eggs. And that can be just a label that means that they're still in a conventional system. They're just not in a little cage, but they're, not exposed to sunlight. They're not foraging for insects and all the things that are going to make those eggs especially the egg yolks, a more nourishing food. So I always recommend, I have stuff listed on my website. We've got lists for our patients, check out your local farms. I mean, that's typically the best place. If you don't have any locally, even visiting a farmer's market might help to introduce you to people that responsibly raise their food. Um, you know, we do live in a day and age. It's typically not my first choice. I do believe in supporting, the local economy and the local farms, but sometimes that's just not feasible for people. So, we do live in an age where you can get quality meats delivered right to your
Right.
doorstep.
Yeah.
So, that is a gift that we live in that with that possibility right now. But I do think that, supporting local farms is the best way to go. Um, but I think when we look at food sourcing, so when we look for our meats and our eggs, and even our produce, we're going to be obviously supporting local economy, but we're going to have healthier food that hasn't been, hopefully if you're looking for like a pasture raised or grass-fed beef, pasture raised poultry items and pork items, you're going to get, like I said, a completely different food than what is raised in the conventional system. That's going to be anti-inflammatory for your body. Um, So, but in that same vein, I think when we source foods, we also need to kind of think about how produce has been produced as well. So, if we're looking at conventional versus like an organic or beyond organic, sustainable produce, again, we're not even really comparing food because we're going back to what is the health of the soil that this particular plant has been grown in. We know that when we have good, rich, fertile soil, that plant is going to be exponentially more nutritious than the conventional counterpart. And I think a big difference between, even when we're talking about ancestral nutrition, one thing that our ancestors had going for them is they did not live in an incredibly toxic environment. Environmental toxins are ubiquitous in our culture today. And it's a sad reality of living in the 21st century, but we also can kind of vote and choose with how we source things and pay for what we are going to consume. So I don't think, unfortunately, organic even is as clean as we would hope, just because our environment is so destroyed by environmental toxins. But I do believe that they are going to be the better choice. So really doing your due diligence um, to consume things that are not exposed to the environmental toxins is going to have massive health implications for you and your family. And then I always say, if you're in the position to, I mean, of course, supporting your local farmer is fantastic, but if you can even grow some things, if you have the littlest plot of land, you can grow your own food, and you know exactly what is going on that food, what's going into your soil, and not to mention just the beauty of connecting with your food is really priceless.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, I get a lot of people asking me, what questions do you ask? So I can find local farmers that still
Mhm.
feed their pigs out with soy and GMO corn, and same with beef. So
Absolutely.
what do you look for when you're trying to source something locally?
Absolutely. So that is typically my very first question
Yeah.
is, what are you
Everybody
feeding your animals?
Yeah.
And oftentimes they will, like, farmers are pretty happy to share exactly what their practices are, even if they don't align with what you want. They're typically very transparent about that. Sometimes, I'm thinking back to all the farms in my local area that I support, and I mean, I've gotten and dirty with those farms. Like, they've shown me their back room. They've shown me where they milk. They show me, this is how we do this. Let's go out and see where the chickens are, and how we rotate through our pastures. And so don't be afraid to say, hey, can I see can I see the animals? I mean, you should be able, as you're driving up their driveway, to see animals on pasture, and enjoying sunshine and being alive out in their native environment. So, asking, number one, what are you feeding your animals, and asking questions about how they manage their livestock, and how they are milked and whatnot. Asking to see that you're going to be able to see whether or not these animals are truly being raised responsibly and sustainably.
So what are some deal breakers for you? Like in my area, we have to dig to find, because I live in Missouri. So this is just, you can find farmers all day long. It's just everybody's doing it conventionally. What are deal breakers?
So in Missouri, you would probably do you have laws against raw milk?
We don't know. We actually have very lenient laws. Yeah,
Okay.
very few.
Deal breaker for me would be any sort of conventional feed that is going to contain soy. For us, I mean, even corn, there are some other grains that we don't love, really just because our family is sensitive to them. And if we're going to be exposed through the animal products we're consuming, that's just not ideal for us. But definitely soy is an absolute deal breaker. I think if they're being given any antibiotics or hormones, complete deal break. Don't be afraid to ask, what do you supplement your feed? Do you vaccinate? Do you give hormones? What are you giving to your animals? Those are probably the biggest ones. And again, if I don't see that these animals are truly on pasture, that would be a deal breaker as well.
Right. Yeah. We have to go pretty far out of our way to get all the way grass-fed beef. So not grain finished, but just,
Yeah.
the leaner grass-fed. It's not
Absolutely.
too available around here, but it is. You can find it. It's just,
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because grass-fed has even become a term that is a little gray and unclear.
because all
So
cows are grass-fed to an extent. I mean,
exactly. So understanding, okay, you're saying they're grass-fed. Are you supplementing with any sort of, grain at all? That would be a deal breaker. And if even that grass finished, you want to cross the finish line with those grass-fed animals. Most cows are started on grass or on grass at some point, like you said. So definitely something to be aware of.
I was also going to talk a little bit back when you were talking about fats. It
Mm-hmm.
can be pretty tricky unless you cook from scratch, because you might think that you're not getting any of those oils, but then
Mm-hmm.
if you're eating any processed foods at all, I know that's happened to me where I'm like, oh yeah, we cook with coconut oil and butter only. And then I look at, just these tortilla chips or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you have most likely has one of those offending oils. Because people don't, I don't know, does anybody still buy canola oil? I was gonna say people don't buy canola oil anymore. Maybe I'm wrong.
I I don't know. I would hope they wouldn't admit to it if they were.
But it can be in things that you don't realize.
Absolutely. It totally can. So even if something, if I do this a lot, and even with my clients, oh, it's organic. Hell, or oh, it says it's paleo or grain free or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so really, I mean, it seems so second nature for me. And even as I'm teaching my girls to, like, well, let's look at the label. What does it say? Oh, soybean oil is the first ingredient on this,
Yeah.
for crying out loud. Like, it's so, I mean, that's great that it's organic soybean oil, but
It's
come
not
on, it's still going
GMO.
to end up being genetically modified and inflammatory, a hormone disruptor. So, absolutely just learn to read those nutrition labels and scrutinizing, and it's really easy. I mean, you see something's labeled organic, flip it over and see what's in it.
Right. Yeah. It can still have lots of sugar too, just because it's organic sugar, doesn't
Oh yeah.
necessarily.
That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is, and my girls even, like, we'll be out shopping. Oh, mom, it's organic. Well, Yeah, but it has 35 grams of organic cane sugar, which is
Right.
not going to be beneficial for
It's literally
any
just
part.
not GMO sugar, but it's still everything else about sugar.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
So, where would you recommend that people start? If usually whenever I talk about this topic, I like you say one thing at a time. I usually am like, well, okay, you can start by fermenting
Yeah.
cabbage. That's somewhere really easy to start. Maybe
Mhm.
then add on soaking your grains and
Mhm.
eventually, but what kind of resources as far as books, where would you recommend people begin?
Yeah. So I mentioned Nourishing Traditions by Sally
Mhm.
Fallon
Yep.
Morell. And that is, and I think most people who have been on this wellness journey have at least heard of that book and really point to that as kind of the gold standard. If you're a generally healthy person just wanting to optimize your wellness and optimize your nutrition, that is one of the most comprehensive resources that you're going to find. In fact, and that's kind of where we're at the end goal for a lot of our clients is to end up there. We want to get your gut healed and your body or whatever symptoms into remission so that we can ultimately get you to more of a nourishing traditions diet. A lot of our clients are chronically sick people. So they're often not doing a lot of gluten and dairy because of the immune and inflammatory response that it elicits in them. But I would say absolutely, hands down, Nourishing Traditions. And the Weston Price blog and website are also fantastic. It's kind of, they also have in their for their membership Wise Traditions. It's a quarterly journal that comes out, and it kind of talks all things nutrition and farming and holistic health. So it kind of takes Nourishing Traditions just another step further and just making wise decisions for your own personal health and your family's health as well. And I would probably have to even say, if you have any symptoms, it probably would point you towards my book, because that really is taking a decade worth of study for myself and kind of boiling it down into the most important parts. You mentioned fermented foods. There's a whole section in there about fermented foods and drinks. So I love fermentation. I'm a little hesitant to say that that's a place where people should start, just because I have so many patients that have even like a mold sensitivity or some symptoms that they can actually even be aggravated by
Oh, wow.
in the
Okay.
beginning with some of those things. So there's a word of caution. If you don't feel awesome eating a fermented food, back off, or check out a trusted practitioner that might be able to help walk you through that. But all in all, when you are taking in a fermented food, it is just a probiotic in food form. Plus, it's delicious and fun to eat, and just complements food so well. Um, so those would probably be my biggest resources at this time. Our clinic actually also has a blog, so if you are interested in other, health related things, that can be a place for. It's pretty much exclusively written by myself, so you can get some of my thought process on all things functional medicine and different topics on there as well.
So where is that again? That is Restorative
So,
Chiro or
yeah, restorativechiro.com. That
okay.
is the website for our clinic, which is actually now Restorative Wellness Center. It grew from Restorative Chiropractic. Now it's Restorative Wellness Center. We have an MD on staff and another chiropractor. My husband's a functional medicine practitioner, and myself. So that's Restorative Wellness Center. I also have my own personal website, drashleyturner.com, where there's a lot of, I've linked a lot of kind of my favorite products and different food sourcing
Okay.
things in there, which is often a helpful resource. And my books can be found there as well.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next. And then you're on Instagram at Dr. Ashley Turner, so I'm sure you probably have your website linked there as well. I'm
Yeah.
looking at your website right now. And then you have Cultivating. Oh wait, no, that's not a book. Is that a book? Cultivating
Creating
the
the Restorative Table.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's my second book. And that's more, I'm a homeschooling mother first and foremost. So that is kind of just a complimentary resource to Restorative Kitchen. And it's just a short, sweet resource for families who want to not only, cultivate good health and nutrition, but also, family connection. So there's a brief section about just cultivating togetherness around the table, but also, even how to approach the table that's going to be the most health promoting as well, sitting down. So many people don't sit down to eat anymore. So sitting down, gathering around whoever, it could be friends. I mean, I think probably a lot of your listeners are likely moms or home, and gathering your people around you, sitting down, taking some deep breaths. I mean, just that alone has massive implications on our digestion and assimilation. So, chewing our food and digestion is a top-down process. So, we have to look at the basics. Are we coming to the table in a super stressed out place? If we're stressed out, we're going to have decreased HCl production. So we're not even going to have adequate stomach acid to start to break down our food, and also to initiate the cascade of all of the digestive process and the digestive enzyme release. So, it sounds silly, but it's so simple and important. So if you're having digestive symptoms, I mean, the first thing I ask people, well, are you sitting down to eat? Are you taking a few deep breaths and grounding yourself? Are you chewing your food well? Those are basic, but oh, so important. So just a reminder there. And then just, how to create a life-giving ambiance to your table. And then most of the rest of the book is just various discussion and conversation starters that you can do with your spouse, with your children. And, I think the table has profound implications on our families and on our communities and our culture as a whole. So if we're really being intentional with those meal times, I think that we are just wonderful and beautiful things can come from those meal times.
Oh yes, definitely. I was gonna say, but Dr. Ashley, what if I have 4 little boys? How do I not
I
be
don't
stressed?
know anything about boys. I don't know.
Oh
I have
no.
2
I
girls,
have
and
I
I
had
don't know
2
anything.
girls, and then I had 4 boys, and our dinner tables are the opposite of everything you're describing right now. And I mean, we'll get back to that place, I know. But right now it's just like, sit, stop climbing in the window, get off the table.
Oh, girl,
Oh my gosh.
I'm not sure I have anything worthwhile to say, because boys are like a totally different from what I deal with. So I don't know. Little by little, I hope. I would hope little by little bits of training. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. They're so little. We had 2 girls, and then we had 4 boys in a row. So all of the boys are 7 and under.
Wow.
And so, yeah, there's just going to be a certain level of chaos, I think. I don't know if it's reasonable to expect there to be none, but I think we could probably,
Maybe a little bit more controlled chaos.
Yeah, that'd be good. Oh man. Awesome. So best place to find you is drashleyturner.com, and then Instagram at Dr. Ashley Turner. And then on Instagram, it's Dr. Ashley Turner. Correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband will call me Drash.
Oh,
Ash. That's his nickname for me. So I have to put a period in there because people won't understand. And
yep.
I
don't know if you follow. I follow people like that. I've always thought of their name as something different. Then when they say it, I'm like, oh, I did not read it that way. I have a little sister named Ashley, and we go skiing every year since we were kids. And so her nickname is Crash. That's been her nickname forever.
Oh my goodness.
Crash.
I love it. It's so fun.
It lends itself to nicknames.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your so much knowledge. You've given us a lot of places to start. If anybody wants to dig deeper, there's a lot to learn. All right, well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure to go check out Dr. Ashley Turner over on Instagram, and I will see you in episode 76.